PowerPoint. I'm just Zoom recording. And so these are your standards, and this is where your exam comes from. And so standard one, if you've watched my videos, you know that standard one is the standard that is most highly tested on the exam. Statistically speaking, you could get anywhere from, 40% of the exam from standard one, 50% of the exam from standard one, because domain one of the PPR exam is only from standard one, and it's worth 34%. Domain three, which is worth 33%, and those two are the bulk of the exam, also again includes standard one. And so there's a reason. It's not like, oh, there's a reason why that standard is the most important for us. And because it's about our, first of all, understanding like the theoretical background having to do with human growth and development, our students, all of their various ways of being diverse, and the ways in which we support, plan, assess, implement instruction for those different diversities. And so today, what we're going to be doing is doing a deep dive into this area here. We're going to be, hold on, I'm looking for my little handy dandy righty thingy. Where is it? Oh, there it is up there. Sorry, guys. Standard one is all about you designing instruction that is appropriate for them, cognitively, maturity wise, emotionally, physically, all of the above. Is it appropriate for the age group, grade level, and the various other types of differences that we can have? So it's not only age group and grade level, which is very important, but it is a myriad, manifold, many, multiple, lots of differences that our students bring to our classroom. And we have to plan for that. We have to acknowledge it. And that's what today is going to be about. Today is going to be about getting to know your students, because that is one of the most important sections for us. It's the first section of all of the standards. It's really, really important. So this particular section, and I'm going to just erase this really quickly. Very, very important. Standard one also includes your content and pedagogy knowledge, your knowledge of the selection of the instructional goals and the different objectives that you're going to do to meet the various students' needs, right? To make them achieve or help them to achieve those learning objectives, skill objectives, resources, and then designing instruction for those particulars. We're going to be discussing all of that today, but we're going to begin with getting to know your students. So do I have any questions before I begin about the test or anything in particular? Okay, good to go. No news is good news. Although if this were like a real class that I were taking a grade for, and I was like trying to assess, collect data, I could maybe have a system where you had to raise your hand, or like you gave me a thumbs up, or you gave me there was some sort of sign that everything was copacetic, so that I would get that feedback from you guys, and then I would have actual data to go with if this were, a class for assessment. Here we are. So standard one is about the breakdown of it. If we want to write what it's about, it is you, the teacher, planning appropriate, effective, engaging instruction and assessment for all of the different types of students that you have. That's what standard one is about. Point blank, period. You planning, creating instruction and assessment that it is appropriate for all of the students, and that it's like high quality content, right? That it's founded in your TEKS. The PPR is an exam that all content areas have to take. So whether you're math, I mean, Hazel might be, family consumer science. Denise might be math 7 through 12. Eric might be theater arts. Vanessa might be PE. I don't know. And it doesn't matter because the PPR exam is about pedagogy. And pedagogy is a science, it is an art, and it is a craft. It's kind of like cooking is a science, an art, and a craft. You can do everything appropriately, but if the oven gets too hot, you might burn your stuff, even though you're an amazing cook and you have all the ingredients if you're not familiar with the stove. Same type of situation, but way more complex, dealing with human beings, right? And so dealing with human beings means that we're dealing with crazy diversity. Just within this classroom, it's me, Hazel, Denise, Vanessa, and Eric today, and our life experiences, skill level, work experience with pedagogy, all of that is different. There is so much diversity within us 5 in a classroom of 30 that is multiplied. So what does that mean for us? What is the implication of us having to deal with human beings that are going to come to us with very differences, different skill levels, and not just for the content area, language skill levels, right? Behavioral skill levels, sort of emotional skill levels. We're going to have a whole just different melting pot of skill and ability, resource, and there will be deficits among them, but it's about pairing our students, utilizing our resources, and knowing who we have in the classroom and planning best for them. So what this means for us, understanding that our students are, just incredibly diverse, and that we have to plan. Standard 1 dictates the standards are the law. Literally, they go through, they're decided, it's the law, just like the TEXES are the law. We have to be able to do that. They have to be able to do this when they leave our classroom. So we know we have a lot of different students. How do we make that happen? It's not impossible. We can do it. So one of the first steps is getting to know all of your students, and we'll go into deeper detail what that means. Not just knowing their name, that's the first step, but knowing many other things about them, nuanced things about them, like almost studying them in the beginning of the year to see what makes them tick. What are they interested in? What do they hate? Like, what are they annoyed about? What do they feel not strong or confident in? That matters too. Create an inclusive classroom by making instructional and management modifications based on your understanding of your students. So if you've always had a certain rule or a certain thing and you have to, adjust it to make a classroom management work, that's fine. Rules are not set in stone, and they're based on need and safety and expectations. And so, if you normally need the students to raise their hands to go to the restroom, but you have a student with a bladder issue, certainly you're going to make an adjustment, a modification in your management style based on the needs of your student. And you're always going to want to try to do that. And I tell or have told a particular story of my own schooling when I was in the 3rd grade. Just a little bit about me. I've been a teacher from, since 2003, 2004 was my first year of record. I teach teachers now full-time since 2016, but before that I was, in the public schools. But when I was in 3rd grade, I remember telling my 3rd grade teacher very early that for the first day that I really wanted to sit in the front row, on the front of the rows, all the rows that there were, and she had assigned seating for us. And I just knew as a student, like I was very serious about school, I was a very proud nerd. Am a very proud nerd. but I didn't realize that I had ADHD. I just got diagnosed at age 40. And so my entire life, I got 2 master's degrees before I was 28, but I was overcompensating. I knew, not really, but like, I just knew I needed certain things had to happen for me to be successful. Sitting in the front of the classroom was one of them. And in the beginning, I asked if I could do that. And she said, no. She said, I have my seating arrangement and that's that. And so it was a struggle for me. Luckily, I didn't suffer academically, but it stayed with me. Like, it was jarring to voice and I was young and voicing it, which is unusual. But certainly if our students voice their preferences, their instructional preferences, that we take it into consideration, that our own preferences don't supersede the needs and or learning preferences of the student, because it's not our classroom, it's their learning experience that's taking place within the confines of the classroom they've loaned for our job. So it's their experience, and which is why really understanding them is so very important every year. And I would have teachers tell me, oh, I have my entire year already finished, planned for the whole year. I could turn it in the first day. And I said, I hope you don't turn it in. You haven't even met your students. How could it possibly be something that, like, you don't even know what they like or what activities they would best engage with? Or, I mean, that's just crazy pants to me. You have to get to know them before you can really affect any change on them. Creating a classroom environment, which is really more deeply ingrained or discussed, expanded on in standard 2, which is also domain 2. And that's about promoting a positive, classroom environment, safe, positive classroom environment where effective instruction can take place. But part of that creation of a positive classroom environment is you liking / getting to know your students. Like I said, and I will give examples from my own education. There were teachers that I knew did not like me, or I felt uncomfortable, or I thought they didn't like me. I had other students that I didn't even have felt very comfortable with me, but I always tried to make people feel comfortable, and tried to find ways in which to lift the kids up, even if it was in small increments, even if they were a special ed student, and like walking into the classroom and sitting down without hitting someone or making a ruckus is cause for me to be like, hey, I saw how you came in and just got straight to work. I'm super proud of you about that. Like, looking for reasons to bolster up their self-esteem, because many of them come from environments we can't control and have not had sort of like a positive, I'm sorry, one moment. I think there's, guys, come inside. Thank you so much. Okay, apparently my dogs are loose on the neighborhood. Why are we all arguing over there, you crazies? Go over there. All right. So let's discuss the myriad, multiple, manifold, many ways that students can be diverse. So obviously, differentiation of age, right? And so for the purposes of the PPR exam, you need to pay special attention to grade level and age group. If they thought to use the print to say Miss Sauceda 7th grade English language arts class, 7th grade is important. Or at the very least, it should be a red flag or like a neon sign for you to keep one of your keywords and phrases. Cognitive area, cognitive ability, physical area, their physical abilities and or disabilities. Learning styles. If they mention a learning style, it's important. This exam, the PPR exam, is first and foremost, it's a critical reading exam, which means that as you're taking it, I want you to be mindful of the words that they are particularly choosing for that scenario. They are giving you details, and the devil is in the details. They're giving you details about the background. What's the student What's the scenario? What's the class like? What is the expectation / goal of the teacher or campus or curriculum? And how best, which one of these fits all of the keywords and phrases I identified? So other ways they can be diverse, gender, and not just meaning like, oh, surface level boy or girls, but we know based on research, science, and theory that boys and girls are very different. They learn differently. They have different confidence issues. All students have confidence issues. Like literally they all do. We all do. We are students. Think of yourself as a student when you're thinking about your students. And we have different levels of confidence. Like I was, like I said, a nerd. And if I didn't feel confident in a content area or subject, then I was going to have a panic attack and I needed to rectify it in my situation. But there are other kids who, like, maybe they don't feel confident in math. They didn't have a strong year in math, maybe had weak instruction. They didn't get their needs supported or like weren't, valued as a human and didn't get what they specifically needed in order to circumvent something. And so now they have a self-confidence issue. That's something that we have to circumvent. Sexual orientation, their language, not just their language proficiency, but their spoken language, their other language that they speak from. Their cultural diversity, which can be tied to the other language. So if you have students and they're speaking Mandarin and they're from a small Mandarin speaking country, then it behooves you to become a expert, a quasi expert in that student's culture. Any culture that you've never had in your classroom before, you need to research it and become an expert in that. I had students from Ghana one year. I had in San Antonio, I had students from Nigeria, and I looked up writers, and I found amazing writers, like just like one of my new favorite writers. And the book is called The Fisherman. It's so great. It's like a story about a group of boys in Nigeria. And in any event, I became an expert because I want to connect to my Nigerian boys who are, I have for class, and they might need something different, or I can make connections, or I can bring background knowledge. It's important that you know them, their exceptionalities. What are they super good at? Find out what they're super good at. It doesn't matter if it doesn't like pertain to your content area. Try to find out things about them and find ways in which to infuse that and overlap it in their learning experience. But certainly even just to show that you know them as a human being, as a person. I am shocked with the exceptionalities. Like I have had thousands of students in my decades of teaching students, but several exceptionalities stick out to me. Like one student, she was an 8th grade student. She was also a ballerina. She was a New York Broadway ballerina, and she was in one of Elton John's plays, and she had all these pictures with him. It was really amazing and like very, very cool. And so she had like this connection with Elton John, brought in some of his like lyrics when we were studying poetry, and we like highlighted and sort of shined on her a little bit. And they need that. Not everybody gets that at home. Even the kids that come from rich neighborhoods, they still are neglected sometimes. Their parents are busy and don't talk to them. And so they need someone to say, hey, you know what? That was hard, but you did it. And I saw that. That was kind of cool. All the time, like every day. So students at risk. And there's a lot of different reasons why they might be at risk. Their parents could be going through a divorce. They could have experienced a tragedy, a death in the family. I mean, they could be homeless. There are many reasons why a student can be at risk. And we have to plan accordingly to better help those students, to meet their needs and to help them thrive. Because we don't want to just meet their needs. We want to help them thrive, regardless of where they come from, and socioeconomic status. So just going to go into these little areas a little bit more into detail. Your developmental difference by age. We have all of these different theories. And I said that every teacher is a scientist, and you are. it is very difficult to plan something for the difference of humanity where it's going to be effective and everybody's going to achieve the same things. Like all of these differences, different skill levels, different levels of support from home. I mean, just even on a visceral level, different levels of hunger. Some kids are going to come to your classroom hungry, and some kids are going to be ridiculously well fed with lots of snack money and snacks, and they're going to be in the same classroom. So Caleb Balas, I'm just going to write this down real quick before I forget. So you have Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development, and those are on the cheat sheet, those that are in the resource folder, which I will show you again before we exit, because this PowerPoint is in there and I want for you to have access to the PowerPoints. Erickson's 8 stages of psychosocial development, Colbert's 3 levels and 6 stages of moral reasoning, and then all the myriad other science-based theory, research-based theory, regarding language, memory, physical, emotional development. For instance, Maslow. Maslow tells us if the students are sitting in our classroom and they are hungry, they're not going to be able to think on a high level cognitive, like that's not going to happen. And so I read somewhere you have to Maslow, the highest level of Maslow in order to highest level of Bloom, in order to bloom. We have Bloom's taxonomy and the different levels of like critical thinking and whatnot, but we know a lot based on just their age group and their growth and development. Like the middle-aged students, the girls are all experiencing everybody's almost or going through puberty, or going through. And so the boys that haven't yet gone through puberty, that are still short and a little bit with the baby fat, cachetones, they're not feeling good about themselves when they go to PE or, and the girls are also, so a lot of stuff is going on there. Our younger children, we know that they don't have super long attention spans and that we have to break apart the different activities. So you're not going to be able to stand in front of the classroom and sort of pontificate or direct instruct for 45 minutes with a group of first or second graders. You're going to lose them. A good majority of them, some of them might have that development maybe to stay with you. But most are going to just, their attention span is not there cognitively. Their brains are not developed yet. So we have to plan for what we have. So if in the exam, they tell you an age group or a grade level, they are trying to tell you something theoretically about what you should take into consideration for your best planning of instruction and or assessment, and also your implementation. So cognitive areas. Intelligence involves the capacity to acknowledge, apprehend facts, to get facts, apprehending, taking them in and their relations, and to reason about them, how they're connected, and to think about them, to be intelligence around it, right? And intelligence, because it's not in the same idea of like just you're intelligent if you could speak. No, there are multiple intelligences. I mean, I would even say cooking is a multiple intelligence. It's not listed here, and Gardner didn't list it in his 8 independent intelligences, but I say cooking is also an intelligence and it's one I don't have. So let's talk about the ones that are here. We have linguistic intelligence, that language intelligence, musical intelligence that some people just have. They are more inclined to it. Something in their brain works better with that. Logical, mathematical, again, we have people who minds are more / better, or just that's their strong suit. It's part of their intelligence. Spatial, bodily, kinesthetic, naturalistic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. But I'm sorry, I don't know why I spelled that wrong, but do not expect students to have the same interests and abilities or to learn in the same ways. Don't expect that. And so our application of this is that we should expect all students to be different. They have different intelligences, they come from different places, they have different, like even within the category of a native English speaker, not someone who is an ELL, not someone who's learning English as a second language, someone who is a native English speaker, even with those, we have an array of difference, of diversity with oral language proficiency. Some students come from a house where people talk all the time. Their parents use big words. There's books. We read, they practice, we model, and the kid comes to us already with high oral language proficiency. And then we get somewhere, no. And they come from an English speaking household and many generations English speaking, but they might not practice. They might not have exposure because their parents have lower oral language proficiency. And so there's a lot that we work with, and you can't expect the students to be the same. So plan for them to be different, but don't just plan for them to be different. Learn who they are in the different areas and the many ways they can be different. And then plan best for those people that you have. Make their learning experience the best. And I swear to you that they will go to the moon and beyond for you if they feel like you care about them. If you do these things, the students will, when they're 30 years old, or like just still be trying to contact you when you're no longer even in the classroom, because you were someone who believed in them or said, good job, or you can do it. Let's practice more. Mistakes are normal. Mistakes are necessary for growth. So spend time and effort and look for potential. Don't just look for, even if you're the math teacher, I don't want you looking for just math intelligences. I want for you to try to find ways to make your students shine and make them feel like they're shining, even if it's not your content area, and try to find ways to overlap. Development of, don't focus on the deficits. Yes, our students come to us with a lot of needs, but you don't want to just look at them as far as like high achieving, lots of middle ground needs, big time needs. We don't want to look at them as just needs. That's not what they are. They're not just a bag of needs. The students, they are a bag of potential. They might need help in areas that aren't natural intelligences to them. That doesn't mean they can't do it. And we need to find ways to, like I said, unlock hidden potentials, highlight established potentials that they already have and know about themselves, because development of their potential is a need that we need to pay attention to as well. We need to be familiar with their past achievements. Ask them, have you, won any spelling bees or whatever? Get to know them and their achievements and the nuances of them. Maybe they, no one's ever asked my son, but when he was a freshman in high school, he gave a speech on the steps of City Hall in San Antonio after the Parkland shooting in Florida for the March of Our Lives. He was one of like 6 students in San Antonio that helped organize it. And he went through most of high school and nobody even knew he did that. It was a really cool thing. But like, if your student did that, that would be something very cool, and a way in which you could maybe get them to be more excited about your English language arts class. I would have done that had I been his English teacher. I'm just his mom though. Be aware of past experiences that have developed a child, whether they be negative or positive, right? Especially the positive ones. Students that experience trauma learn differently, they trust differently. And when you're in a learning game and it's high stakes for them, they know about grades, they know about everyone needing to succeed and the structure of school. So if they are ready or not doing well in something, and they come from a place of trauma, which a majority, research says, half of our students have experienced trauma, and 1/4 of them have experienced like ridiculous trauma in our classrooms. And so we have to like eliminate stresses, eliminate aggression, and have it be, some of it is not fun. If you're doing calculus and you're used to, I take it from someone who is a nerd and doesn't like to be I don't like to feel dumb. Nobody likes to feel dumb. And everybody has to at some point when you're learning something new. And so getting students to be okay with that, especially those ones that have experienced trauma, challenging our students, right? Using a variety of ways of grading and evaluating them. If you're not the English teacher and it's not a writing assignment where you're going to grade grammar in the writing, then why not give them the option? You can either draw a model of the science, whatever, of mitosis, or you can explain to me orally the stages of mitosis, or you can write about it. Give them multiple ways in which to shine for you, to show you that they can be successful. Look for something unique that the student can do, or like I said, it's always a way to make them shine. We are growing, molding, helping instruct and mentor young citizens, students. And so cannot say it enough that many of them don't come from good homes. And so it is literally our job. It falls on us to find ways to bolster them. You'll see on another slide when I speak about affective skills and affective learning, and that as a way for you to take into consideration when you're teaching. So for our struggling learners, before instruction, we're always going to want to activate, and or if you can't activate it, if it's something completely totally new and you know there's not going to be any connection to their background knowledge, maybe you're doing mitosis and there's no connection, you're going to activate their prior knowledge, which means you might create what I like to call a lesson sort of trailer, where you do an overview of vocabulary that they might need to comprehend, where I illustrate it, we talk about what it means, use it, delve into that and see visuals and try to get ideas. So you either activate what is existing or you create background knowledge, that background prior knowledge, so that we can connect to the new knowledge. Have different graphic organizers, bubble graphs, note-taking skills that you have taught and instructed your students with available for them to sort of gather their thoughts or speak with the text. Again, helping students pre-learn vocabulary. Always pre-teach academic vocabulary. That isn't always every day. No, and that's for ELL students, that's for special ed, that's for native English speakers. You must pre-teach academic vocabulary. If there is more vocabulary in your lesson that might be unfamiliar, because oh, I have ELL students and they might not know this because it's like they're sort of idiom, or it's sort of something that's like common to English vernacular only and they haven't learned it yet. Let me go ahead and also pre-teach this. You'll be surprised. You'll have native English speakers who also benefit from that extra vocabulary instruction. During instruction, you're going to select red flags to identify when a student's struggling. So red flags would differ depending on your content area, right? They would look different for math, for reading, science. And so that you can identify when the student is either struggling to learn or struggling to do the activity, and then be able to swoop in with your intervention that will get them back on course with the learning. And then after instruction, you want to provide meaningful reteach or remediation for the few students that you noticed as you are assessing them. You are doing a formative assessment and you're forming your plan for instruction and re-instruction for remediation based on the gathering of your data. So those that didn't achieve mastery, you reteach, you redirect, you provide directive feedback where you're helping them. Also for struggling learners, you want to frequently vary your instructional technique, not always standing up in front of the class. not always getting into groups of 4 and having them answer one question at the end of the week, like really mixing it up and taking into consideration, like my kids are blabbermouths. They love talking. So I'm going to have them do a lot of think, pair, shares and find somebody who, so they can go around talking to each other, like find different ways in which to instruct your students with activities that break up the monotony and help build on their other strengths, their linguistic abilities, by having them do an oral activity instead of just having them write it down. Not everything has to be written down and turned in. It could be like, I listened to you and walked around, or you spoke to each other and wrote these things down, like, and find someone who. Develop lessons around students' interests, their needs, and their experiences. You know, if you know your students have certain experiences, bring those into recollection whenever possible. They have particular needs linguistically. If you have a lot of ELL students, then you're going to want to make sure that you are definitely doing a lot of really rich vocabulary instruction, direct vocabulary instruction before any of your texts, before any of your new lessons, and that you're providing a lot of opportunities for the students to write those new words and speak them with their partners in think, pair, share. So like, you ask a poignant question and then they write it down, they write their answer. Now they're going to turn to their partner who you've carefully crafted, and you put them next to someone who speaks their native language, but also English perfectly, as to be a wonderful student model. And they practice, and they're, oh, this is how it's pronounced, blah, blah, blah. They practice it, and then you move back to whole group instruction, and the student is now feeling more confident and comfortable when you call on them for whole group instruction. So developing lessons around your students' needs holistically, their interests and experiences. Provide for encouraging, supportive environment, that you're not one of those teachers where, like, I didn't want to go to. I had a few of them, not many, but I did have teachers where I was like, oh my God, I have this person's class next. And I was like, wish me luck, you know, because it was going to be bad, or like they were going to be in a bad mood, or it was just not going to be fun. We were going to get yelled at, you know, and I still hear that from my own children. I have 5 children. One of them's graduated already. One of them graduates this year. And then I have a first grader, a second grader, and a freshman also. So, I mean, I've heard a lot, and I'm a researcher, so I'm always paying attention to the trends. And there's not so many of the teachers who I think need to find a new profession, but there are still some, and it matters. You know, with my kids, I'm able to circumvent any negative experiences they might have, but many kids don't have a parent who is an ex-teacher who teaches teachers who can help them circumvent any needs they have at home. Make your students feel welcome and supported, like they're important people to you, and they should be. They should be. Like, my kids are so special to me still to this day. Using cooperative learning and peer tutors for your students who need remediation. Your cooperative learning group should be carefully crafted to be super diverse, but to also be a resource to those kids that maybe have lower skill levels. Maybe there also might be some English language learners in there, and have them with super high achieving students who are model English language speakers and also speak. So you want to carefully craft them to have people who are like peer tutors. It's good for the person that is high level, let's say GT, to be helping someone else that is an extra added component to their own learning experience that's even needed and necessary, so as not to be boring. Because if it was just a matter of just doing the work, I'll be done in 2.5 seconds, but I have to do the work, and also there's some people that need help and I might need explaining. That makes it a little bit more critical thinking, a little bit complex, and you have just killed 2 birds with 1 stone. You provided an opportunity for the GT student or that higher level student to have like an extension of their own learning in that leg of help or resource for remediation. And then you have your lower level student or that English language student, not that they're one and the same because they aren't, have someone there to help bring up that particular need. Provide study aids always, visual aids always. Visuals are the best. Visuals are the best for learning. And I say this, and as I was making this for you guys. I was thinking, man, I need to put some visuals in here because it's like, it's just text. But I would never do this for kids. You really shouldn't even do it for teachers. You want to have it be interesting so that people pay attention. I'm sure some of you are falling asleep right now. Don't do it. Use audio visual materials for instruction. Take steps to develop students' self-confidence. Like I said, assign a task where they can showcase a particular skill, even if they're failing at every other TEK, but you find one that they can do well, and then you build on that confidence to the next one. If they feel bad about themselves, they're not going to want to try for you. I don't want to feel dumb and make a mistake. So give me something I can do and build me up a little bit to where I feel like, yeah, I can do this next step. I can do it. Gifted and talented. Unchallenged GT students may develop poor attention spans, study habits, form negative attitudes from school and learning, and waste academic learning time. They might even start failing. Many of them drop out. Many gifted and talented students drop out before they graduate because they're so bored and they know all that stuff and they just can't. They just cannot. Gifted and talented is a form of special ed. It's under the umbrella of special ed. And so we need hands-on, cross-curricular, creative, project-based activities. Also, again, pairing them with lower level students and utilizing their resources and abilities as a tool and resource for you. The affective area before we leave focuses on feelings and attitudes of your students. And while emotional growth isn't super easy to facilitate, it can be done. And it must be done because students' feelings about their skills and or their feelings or opinions about a certain subject. So their opinions about their skills, like I'm so bad at art. I'm going to want to try at art. Anything having to do with art, I'm going to complain about it because I don't think I'm good at art or math or whatever it is, are at least scientifically as important as what even they learn, their perception, my perception of myself. So it's important that we try to bolster them, especially if they're going around saying, I'm not good at math. That's preposterous. Everybody is good at math. Math is the universal language. And I just had my first grader tell me she wasn't good at math. My senior daughter told me when she was in the first or second grade, she wasn't good at math. And I thought that, and I said the same thing to her. That's preposterous. Everybody's good at math. I said, it's different concepts are difficult, are sometimes more challenging than others to learn. We just got to work at it. No big deal. And my senior takes the highest level of math. So she got over that, but I built her up and said, that's preposterous and silly. Of course we all are. And we'll just work at it and make it easier for ourselves. So, those affective skills or social emotional learning skills take a backseat to those cognitive and academic learning skills, knowledge and skills, the TEKS, but they are important, almost as important, because you won't even attempt these other things if you don't have these good affective, they're called soft skills, and cognitive or academic, they're like the harder skills. And so, but they're so both needed. Like if one is really low, the other one's going to be really low too. Science tells us that over and over and over and over again, that the fastest way to turn around a failing school is by implementing social emotional curriculum, building up their affective learning, their ability to have time management with certain things, their ability to self-direct when they're doing an activity, self-agency to create action on their own, their confidence in particular skills, their self-esteem. So you're going to have a range of affective characteristics in your classroom. Low to high self-esteem. You have to manage those, plan for them, and help bolster those that are in the low areas, because they will affect the students' cognitive and academic abilities. There's no way that it can't. Science tells us they absolutely will have an effect. Okay, I think that oh, chihuahuas. You guys there? I think that that's it for my slideshow today. Does anybody have any questions for me? You guys can unmute yourself. Does anybody have any questions? Oh,
Mark, material on the link that you're gonna send us?
Oh, yes. Let me show that to you really quickly so I could just show you what's in there. If you don't already have that, and that way I can send it to you right now after we hang up. So this is it. And it has your standards, very, very most important document. I want everyone to print it and, take notes on it, do a deep dive, make sure you are familiar with all of these things. We looked at some of them, the intellectual, social, physical, emotional. We talked about those things, different implications for developmental characteristics for planning, learning needs, skills, interests, all of that. Make sure you go through these and that you are beginning to familiarize yourself with the things that we're responsible for. If you haven't already begun to watch the videos, highly recommend it. I say way more insightful stuff in some of these videos, like this one in particular that has, somewhere like 14,000 views. It's long, but sit down, print out your standards and take notes on the document. Remember, I was telling you that, like with our students, kinesthetic, the different learning styles, the visual, audio, kinesthetic, same for us. And there's something that happens neurologically to us when we add that added kinesthetics to it. So I want you to do the movement of writing and taking notes as you view some of these videos. And so you will find today's PowerPoint here and some other PowerPoints that I utilize in other videos that are already on that list. So have you guys received access to the YouTube list?
I don't think so.
It has 26 videos, and some of them are on different, sections. Like ours today was on a different section. Some of them are more of an overview. All of them are very important. Some of them are long, some of them are short. I would print your standards and begin watching some of them, maybe like one a week, in addition to attending the classes on Wednesday, so that you feel fully prepared for the day of the exam, so that you don't have any testing anxiety. Because I find that that's the best way of getting rid of testing anxiety, is by over preparing. I'm gonna, where is it? I'm gonna put for you guys in the chat room I'll send it to you through the system as well, but and make sure that you please subscribe. And also, I don't know how you do it, but like subscribe to the playlist so that you get notifications when I add other video tutorials on different lessons that we do. So I just put in the chat room the link for the PPR playlist, and it has hours of tutorials. And like I said, there's some that go over domain 3, domain 4, domain 2, domain 1. Again, like there's many on domain 1 because it's so very important. I'm also going to put the link for the resources here for you right now in the chat. And so you can actually just open it up really quickly and save it in your web browser. Just like come in and save it in your web browser, and you'll be able to access all of it. And so the cheat sheet I was telling you about that goes into detail with some of the theories that we sort of skimmed over. Piaget's theories here, of Erickson's, Kohlberg's, Maslow. And please watch the video so you can see this is a very old document, and scholarly thought and knowledge has changed. So there are some changes to this document, but I speak about them on many of the videos in which I use this. So these are all of the different resources I utilize in my sessions that are on that YouTube playlist.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Tamara Palacio. Do you have a pre-test that you've made, or like a sample test for the PPR that you like